This is the map of the internet. Of course, it's not the map of the internet today. It's the map of the internet in 1977, which is almost half a century ago. The internet back then was quite different to the internet of today. The internet had no commercial interest vested in it. Therefore, there was no real security required for it. If we look at the same map from geographical perspective, this is what we see. We see internet mapped on the map of the world, which at the time for the internet was the United States. There's also London on the right side for those of you who are more keen to detail. So that's how the internet was back then. But unfortunately, that was before my time. I'm not that old. I started with this. This is Leningrad, also known as Soviet clone of the ZX Spectrum computer, which was a 64 kilobyte computer. You could do a bunch of stuff on that. I was 7 years old, and a relative of mine didn't need his anymore, so I got this, and I started programming. But even though I was born after inception of the internet, at that point it was still possible to grasp the history of the internet. So let's take a look at what has happened and what will happen. Hackers were there from the beginning, and this is how hackers were defined, right? Technical people, good people, do dubious things at points, kind of like we look at hackers now. But this was written by the New York Times way, way long ago, end of last century. And it still holds true. I am a hacker myself. I'm a good hacker. And the word hacker has been stigmatized over the years, and we have to fight to keep this definition true. To not let companies or politicians or governments try and take the term and use it for something else. Now, going back to before I was born, this is around 1980s. Telecommunication industry were the first to experience malicious hacking. Those were the first companies that actually had to defend against hacking because there were financial implications to that. In 1981, Captain Zapp was the first hacker ever convicted. He was convicted because of hacking a telecom. What he did was quite ingenious, actually. He hacked the telecom and switched the clock, internal clock of the telecom systems, so that during daytime, telecom thinks it's night, and during nighttime, telecom thinks it's day. So most of the calls are cheaper at night, back then at least, without flat rate, so lots of people got lots of cheap calls. This guy, of course, quite an old picture. Kevin Mitnick speaks for itself, right? Kevin was one of the, well, he was the most visible hacker back at the time. Also done, of course, a lot of attacks on telcos, even the FBI itself. Now, 1981 is also the same year when the Chaos Computer Club was founded in Germany. It is a hacker club that organizes different conventions throughout the year. And I use the word hacker here in even broader term. I'm not talking about hackers that hack a computer system or telecom system for good or for bad. I'm talking about hackers that hack anything. They want to see how their car works, and not Tesla. They want to see how their car from 40 years ago works. They want to see how can you hack food, how can you hack embroidery, how can you hack the world. That's what the club is about. And it was founded in 1981. So when the internet came to be compatible to how we see it now, there was no commercialism in the internet. It was all about connecting a couple universities and defense installations in the United States. Dot-com bubble followed, and Most of you here in the room probably were being born around that time when dot-com bubble happened. I remember it vividly. I didn't understand much about IT and about how the internet works, but dot-com bubble was a strange fusion between IT, between technology, between the internet, and the real world. It was the first time when it really collided. Dot-com bubble led to stock exchanges crashing. So first, financial stocks and indicators went up because everyone was buying domains, and as long as you had a company that ended in .com, you could get good stock market rating and you could make a lot of money. But then people realized that all of that is just a bubble. If we go forward just a bit, we can talk about the cyber domain. And cyber domain is a real thing, even though for my colleagues working in IT security all around the world that will be watching this in the recording, when a person like me says cyber, all of them will die inside. But I will say cyber a lot this presentation. And cyber is a real thing, but it's been overused, of course. Talking about the cyber domain simply means what it means. And cyber domain is a military thing, right? It's a cyber domain, similar as a space domain of warfare, as land domain, and so on. And when cyber domain came to be, when military actually defined the word cyberspace, is when the internet became part of the real world. Or rather, that's the point where we validated that in fact internet has become part of our daily lives because the military has interest in protecting it. And it happened in 2007. This is in a country not far from here. This is in Estonia, Tallinn. This is the Bronze Soldier. In 2007 in Estonia, Bronze Soldier Rise happened. Local government in Tallinn decided to move this young gentleman to a different place in the city, and having quite a large Russian population in Tallinn, there were riots, and because this soldier here is of course a Russian soldier, and there were riots, and people were not okay with that, and there were riots on the streets. But what also happened, large-scale cyber attacks, notably denial of service attacks, happened across Estonia on their infrastructure, which is believed to be Russia but not proven. And 2007 was a turning point when cyber domain was defined. And after these events, NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence was founded in Tallinn. And funnily enough, this guy has been moved to the basically backyard of that said Center of Excellence, just around the fence. Now, let's fast forward from 2007 to 2019. This happened this month. That's a news headline, actually. And this, in my eyes, confirms cyber as a reality. If before we had information that, okay, cyber is now part of our world, now it's completely clear. If a state is ready to do physical attack immediately, the same day, on a cyber attacker, that means we are there, that's what's happening. That means that we've come to the end of the internet as a separate entity. But that is how we got here. What about the bright future? Well, the future is bright for IT security companies. For the rest of you, not so much. What will await you in the coming years? What will await you in the next 15 years when we speak about cybersecurity? Centralization. Most data will be held by a limited number of providers, and we see that happening now. In India, the Prime Minister actually had to intervene when Facebook was becoming the internet. So basically, many people in India didn't recognize the difference between the internet, the web, and Facebook. Facebook was everything for them. And it's a dangerous thing, right? We are currently fighting monetary centralization all around the world. Maybe some of you have heard about the Gini index. It measures inequality. So centralization is a bad thing, right? Currently, we have lots of money concentrated in the hands of a few. And the same is going to happen with data. And by analogy, I say to you, it's also a bad thing. Furthermore, it will also mean concentration of the attack surface. Hackers will be going against those providers. And if my data, or if our collective data, is scattered across a bunch of small companies, it's not financially reasonable for hackers to hack them all. If all our data is in one company, say Facebook or Google, it's reasonable that hackers will form large groups. Maybe nation states will form large groups of hackers that will hack that single or those 2 or 3 companies. So that's another risk that we're going to have to face. Then, of course, we have to talk about privacy. And with privacy, you see, we are doing something here in Europe. We are trying to fix stuff here in Europe. But we are going about it the wrong way. We are trying to punish the private companies when actually it's the government and government contractors that are doing the most harm to privacy. Let's take a look at this short video. Notice it's video from 2011. The video is 8 years old, but it's still the best video available out there to show my point. So what we see here is a tool designed by professors and scholars at the time, but no doubt now being incorporated into commercial use. It can continuously track an object using video camera or multiple video cameras. It can draw a path for those objects. So imagine having a network of video cameras that tracks you from your home to wherever you're going. It doesn't even need to identify you. It's able to do that with this algorithm from 8 years ago. And it can track people. It can track faces. It can understand that person goes behind an object, and it's still the same person in there. And what's really important here, it can stabilize the faces, and it can extract them live, and you can follow each face. Now, the only thing missing from this technology from 8 years ago is good facial recognition. If you have that, you have full control. Well, guess what? As seen from the airports in some parts of the world, apparently facial recognition technology has gotten there. It's able to identify a person by its face in quite a high quality. So that means we have full video tracking systems now. Okay, but the internet, right? Digital privacy, online tracking. This is the new thing that we're dealing with now. Those of you who are older, you remember back in around 2000, 2002, pop-ups were a thing, right? Just JavaScript pop-ups popping up, and you had to fix that. You had to have pop-up blockers or those windows popping up. Well, now websites have found a new way to annoy us, right? Partly thanks to their legislators asking them to do that. But the thing is, they don't really want us to not be tracked. If you see the second button, it's much smaller and it's harder to use. It's always that way. Some of you are web developers. It's not that you can't make it easy to use. You don't want to, right? Your company doesn't want users not be tracked because tracking is money, of course. Let me ask you a question. How many network addresses will each of you have in 15 years? The network people of you might think IP addresses, but no, we have a bunch of addresses even right now. You have your phone, it has Bluetooth MAC address, it has Wi-Fi MAC address, it has email number for the network. You already are walking around with 5, 10, maybe 15 addresses every day. In 15 years, you will have even more addresses, including IP addresses. Of course, in part, thanks to the Internet of Things. Internet of Things is insecure as hell, and it may warrant a separate presentation, actually. In one sentence, people don't want to pay for stuff they don't need. And they don't understand that they need security. They just need their car to work, their fridge to work. They don't care if their fridge is hacking the America. As I said, we should never go full cyber, but we are going full quantum. And asymmetric cryptography is going to get killed, at least in some of its implementations. So we have to prepare for that. And the sad part is, many of the companies working on quantum computing right now would not be willing to tell the public that they've solved the riddle and they have a fully working, powerful enough quantum computer. And of course, the Cyber Grand Challenge. Have you heard about that? It's run by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency in the United States, run by DoD, affiliated with DoD. The challenge is in building a system that can automatically defend from attacker. And part of the challenge is building a system that automatically attacks back. So if we put it in marketing terms, you can call it artificial intelligence fighting cyber war. And if you look at the winner entries in this contest, it's quite impressive already. Finally, Crypto War 3.0 will not take place. Most of you probably don't remember US export controls in the 90s when you could not export strong cryptography to other countries. And then Phil came with PGP, pretty good privacy, and tried to challenge that. We also had the smaller Crypto War 2.0 over multiple years, A51 for GSM encryption, which was deliberately lowered so that people could, so that governments could intercept mobile phone communications in third world countries. The Clipper chip, when they tried to make sure they can go after your data in your computer without your consent. But Crypto War 3.0 will not take place because cryptography is too important right now. It's being used by banks and other entities that need it on a daily basis for the economy to function. However, you will get hacked, and some of you already have. Thank you.